Oh no, boys and girls, the world is ending and we are back. That's right, it's once again time for our silly little internet show about video games. I'm your host, the long-suffering Shanghai Pete. It's another warm November night here in Los Angeles, the City of Angels, and we are live, and ready to get deep inside Dragon Age 4, the Veilguard. So, I didn't actually plan on doing a review for this. I haven't played a Dragon Age game in years. Most recently was probably when I did a reinstall of Origins during the pandemic. I like the series, I just don't really care about it, and I wasn't excited for this one. Whether that's because I, like most people, have completely lost any hope or faith I may have once had in BioWare, or because I, again, like most people, spent way too much time in the hinterlands during Inquisition, I'm not entirely sure. In either case, like I said, doing a review of Dragon Age 4 was never on my agenda. But I hadn't put out a good rant video in a while. Election season was once again turning the entire population of my stupid country into a pack of baboons, and I needed to tune out. So I grabbed myself a torrent of Veilguard and said, F it. The more I played, the more furiously I found myself scrawling frustrated notes, and before I knew it, I had unwittingly gone deep inside once again. And this review is the result. Please enjoy, or don't, or do some interneting about your hurt feelings in the comments, or whatever. For some reason, I'm relatively sure even the devs at BioWare don't understand, Dragon Age 4 forgoes the tried and true narrative tradition of starting from the beginning, and instead starts in the middle of the game. I don't know why this is, and frankly, I don't care, it doesn't matter. It's an absurd choice made by devs who should be far too experienced to attempt something this blatantly retarded. If you haven't played any of the previous Dragon Age games, especially if you haven't played any recently, your immediate impression of Veilguard will be of a rushed, shallow maelstrom of confusion and the palpable void caused by the unmistakable absence of anything resembling context, and it doesn't get any better from there. When you first fire it up, you're greeted with a surprisingly robust character customization tool that, in spite of itself, renders creating anything that doesn't look like a rejected McDonald's character from 1985 utterly impossible. If you do manage to defeat that, though, you and your short bus Grimace are then immediately deposited into the middle of a detective story that makes no sense, that you don't have time to notice because it so quickly leads into a conflict you don't understand, that despite not having been explained is somehow almost at its culmination, populated with characters you don't know in a place you don't recognize, being told to do stuff you don't care about for people you've never heard of because of stakes that mean nothing to you. To say this is third grade level Fisher-Price, my first storytelling adventure, would be far too generous. This isn't just clumsy and awkward, it's repellent. Not simply because of the level of amateur hour bungling and design ineptitude on glorious display, but because it instantly makes you feel like you're missing something, like you're lost and out of place, like everyone else knows your character and each other except you. Like half the game has already been played for you and you missed it. I feel like I shouldn't have to be explaining this, but starting a role-playing game with a character whose role has already been played and you didn't see it is maybe not such a great idea. Now, in fairness, this wouldn't immediately be the grotesque train wreck it presents itself as if it did what I and I'd guess most players were likely expecting. It's a common scenario. You throw the character into some craziness, all powered up right out the gate, only for disaster to strike. Then you get hit with the flashback or whatever, where the game actually starts and everything gets explained and you start from the beginning. Tropey, a little Metroid-y even perhaps, but tried, true, and most of all, functional storytelling nonetheless. What I did not see coming, however, was the game just proceeding from the jarring, sloppy intro like nothing that required any thorough explanation or setup whatsoever had occurred, oblivious as it proceeded to continue blundering ahead through its woefully planned out first act. And if you think that's hyperbole, well, let me describe part of the first 20 minutes of the game and you can make up your own mind. One of the first things that happens is that some Tyranid or Tau or Elven, whatever, gods break out into reality and start rampaging around trying to end the world. And this is given at most 3 sentences of exposition and happens sort of in the background of another scene. I only really started to realize it happened because other characters were talking about it. Then you're in a forest. Why? Who cares? Where? So what? Then immediately, seconds after you appear, out of thin air in some random forest, who should walk out from behind some nearby trees but a few people that not only everyone knows, but are also all personally acquainted and on a first name basis. What? Then, naturally, it's MacGuffin quest time because, wouldn't you know it, the random forest filled with the random people you already happen to be best friends with in the random area you happen to pop up is, oh whoops, coincidentally surrounded by a big magic bubble that prevents you from escaping it until you complete the Find the MacGuffin quest, of course. What in the goddamn hell is even happening? This story reads like a coloring book with the pages out of order. Now, quick sidebar here, because we are the fairest show in America, I will point out that I'm relatively sure that most of what I just described would at least make sense if I'd played any of the previous Dragon Age games anytime recently. Unfortunately, for one, the last time a game was released in this series was 10 effing years ago. I don't even remember who I was dating back then. And secondly, more importantly, I shouldn't have to have played through the entirety of a 10-year-old game within the last few months just to have a chance of understanding what the hell is happening in a brand new one that I just bought. Or downloaded for free via torrent, whatever. Sorry, the point is that I assume if anyone had happened to play through the last 3 Dragon Age games from the past 20 years, sometime within, the last couple months, all this stuff would probably make sense to you. Otherwise, the rest of us are just sitting here like, what? Okay. All right, sidebar over. With all that being said, you may now be wondering why I'm going through the trouble of so meticulously laying out this miserable failure of a game intro. Well, for a few reasons, not the least of which is that I kind of love to shit on BioWare and by extension EA, but mainly because it's so emblematic of the entire game. The intro is a microcosm of the entire experience. The whole thing is like this, with the pacing perpetually cranked to 14 out of 10.
These go to 11.
Sometimes forcing you through hours where the only dialogue is story-critical convos. It's confusing, shallow, disorienting, and it's always making me feel like I'm missing something. Characters seem to constantly be intimately discussing things I've never heard of or that mean nothing to me. That thing? That's just a bunch of words that sound vaguely like Elvish or something. Doesn't matter. It does this stuff. It's important. We need to do with that stuff. Come along now, it's time to do the stuff. Haha, isn't this fun, all of us doing this stuff right now? Let's be sure to do more stuff later if this stuff doesn't kill us. That would be bad because that'd mean we wouldn't be able to do stuff anymore. Veilguard's idea of character development is an elf saying, and I quote, "That's kind of my thing, fixing magical stuff." Fantastic, because, we wouldn't want to actually show things like that through something silly like storytelling, now would we? Much better to just subtitle all the nuance out of everything and just let people assume it all happens off screen. Like, insanely, by doing that, this game actually comes closest to making the FF15 mistake of any other game I've seen recently. It presents you with plenty of opportunities to interact with and deepen your relationship with other NPCs, sure. But since the entire foundation of not just your character itself, but also your character's relationship with most of the other cast happens off screen before you even start playing, the resulting narrative progression leaves you feeling like you sat down to watch the last third of a movie that you've only heard about secondhand. And even worse, now the entire cast of personalities just feels hollow and uninteresting, like a TikTok mashup of a Rush Hour sequel with one of those James Cameron movies about the blue guys that look like they're from an Xbox game. And in case you were hoping that the gameplay is an improvement from the narrative and the story design, I hate to disappoint, but no, it is not. First off, let's dispel any rumors for any of you that were hoping maybe we'd see a return to form here of the classic turn-based combat of some of the original Dragon Age games. Nope, get fucked, idiot! When you're not button mashing your way through the same copy and pasted generic third-person action combat system that you've already seen and played in 100 games before this one, you're performing tedious, uninspired tasks that you've done 100 times in 100 other games before this one just to move across an area or to get to the objective marker. Stuff like move the thing to the other thing to open the door, tinker with the resonance amplifier to start the weird machine, find the archive spirit, and of course, the all-time classic, deactivate the artifact. Truly compelling stuff here, BioWare. You guys are really in a league of your own. Naturally, accomplishing all these seemingly elaborate feats of adventure and puzzle-solving daring-do required equally creative and elaborate gameplay, like pressing the A button. Wow. Jesus Christ. Have all the devs just flushed themselves down the goddamn toilet at this point? What am I even looking at? And now, don't get it twisted. This isn't just the new Dragon Age game that I'm deciding to hate on. It's all new games. Let's go through the checklist now and play some modern gaming Family Feud. First, can I see third person or over-the-shoulder perspective? Bingo. Geriatric copy-pasted press X 4 times to do the melee combo combat design used in a minimum of 10 other games that also released this year? Ooh, yep, that's there too. Pseudo RPG systems that give off a surface level vibe of actual RPG mechanics but are really just stat sticks more shallow than a puddle. Oh, yep, got that too. Imagine that. All right, doing good so far. What about absurd, over-dramatized to the point of comedy, Michael Bay-style wannabe summer blockbuster story that fails in every possible way and plays out like the people who wrote it forgot about it after making the trailer? Oh, yes, hell yes, of course. Of course, how about more time and money spent on shaders, textures, and marketing than actually developing the game? Oop, check for that too. How about areas that for some godforsaken reason float in a big void of nothingness because the devs were too lazy to model a believable surrounding landscape, so that whenever you're not paying enough attention, you're constantly falling off the edge of something into a pit. Oh yes, wouldn't want to leave that out. And next, can I see gameplay loop that amounts to little more than running to an objective marker, occasionally pressing the A button to move a MacGuffin, or pressing the X button to kill something in your way? Oh, yep, check. And of course, we will also need some AI. Shall we, I don't know, maybe implement some truly innovative enemy behavior that presents a real challenge to the player? Well, maybe, but that might cost money, you know? So what if instead we just use the same brain-dead AI techniques from all those stellar modern action game classics like FF7 Rebirth and Final Fantasy 16, where the mobs are all programmed to just target the player character regardless of what else is occurring, so you spend the majority of all combat encounters constantly mashing the dodge button because the boss never attacks anyone but you. Can we see that on the board? Ah yes, excellent. Now we're talking. I mean, that was a bit laborious perhaps, but I trust my point is clear. The fact that I can do that as a goofy side bit to make myself laugh and still accurately be describing at least a good third of all major games being released in any given quarter, you should find nauseating. The fact that I can do that and also be describing the last 3 major Final Fantasy games and the newest Dragon Age game should be downright horrifying. Suffice to say, more than anything else, Dragon Age 4 is formulaic. It's overly safe and terrified of its audience, but in all the wrong ways for the wrong reasons. Additionally, it's needlessly derivative, campy when it's trying to be emotional, trite and superficial when it's attempting sincerity, and ultimately, perhaps worst of all, man, it's just boring. It's the same medieval forests, elven ruins with the bloom effect cranked too high, floating islands with trees, evil, vaguely skeletal enemies, pseudo-fantasy settings that we've all seen 1,000 times before. Often much better than this, and often in other Dragon Age games. And ultimately was the reason that this genre died out in the first place at the end of the 80s. For movies, anyway. And miraculously, after something like 40 goddamn years, it still hasn't gotten any better. The pixel art boomer shooter Graven, done by a team of like, I don't know, 6 dudes or something, made a far more compelling medieval fantasy RPG setting than Veilguard ever could, and I had way more fun playing that. That's my score for Dragon Age 4, the Veilguard. Go play Graven instead. Sorry, a 2. I give it a 2.
Woke up, smoke up, blunt, then I pass out. Pass out. Woke up, what up, smoke up, blunt, then I'm back down. Back down. What? Woke up, smoke up, blunt, then I pass out. Pass out.